Faisal had grown up in the wide, sun-scorched fields on the outskirts of his village, where the horizon stretched endlessly and life moved at the rhythm of the soil. From childhood, farming had been both his identity and his burden. His father used to say, "A farmer must trust the land, or it will betray him." Faisal absorbed those words. But somewhere along the path to adulthood, he lost the part that mattered-trust. By the time he reached his early 30s, he had become known as a hardworking but difficult young man. His shoulders were always tight, his jaw always clenched, his eyes constantly scanning for things that might go wrong. To the villagers, he was simply cautious. To those closer, especially his wife, Rania, was clear that caution had curdled into suspicion. Rania was gentle, quiet by nature, but not weak. She had dreams once, dreams of a home full of warmth, of children running around, of evenings spent under lantern light, sharing stories with her husband. When she married Faisal, she believed she could build that life. She believed she could help him grow softer, calmer. She believed that her patience would balance his temper. But life in the small clay house they shared soon taught her otherwise. Faisal had a habit of scrutinizing everything: where she went, who she spoke to, how long she spent outside. Even harmless details became fuel for his doubts. If she returned late from the market, he assumed she had stopped to speak with someone. If she laughed while talking to a neighbor, he believed the laugh was meant for someone else. If she was quiet, he thought she was hiding something. The tragedy was that Rania did hide things, but not the things he imagined. She hid her disappointment, her loneliness, her exhaustion. She hid the tenderness she still wished to offer but knew would be rejected. She hid the hope that one day something might change. Their home, once a symbol of a new beginning, gradually turned into a space filled with unspoken tensions. The cracked walls carried the echoes of arguments, most of them ignited by nothing more than Faisal's insecurities. Whenever Rania spoke softly to calm him, his voice would rise, as if her gentleness threatened his authority. Whenever she tried to explain something, he claimed she was making excuses. Whenever she avoided conflict to keep peace, he accused her of secrecy. Yet Faisal was not entirely heartless. He worked tirelessly in the fields, often pushing himself past exhaustion. His body bore the marks of years of labor. His hands were calloused, his back stiff from bending over the crops day after day. Many evenings he returned home drenched in sweat and dust, frustration heavy on his brow. He believed that providing food, money, and shelter was the essence of being a husband. He believed that his hard work justified his temper. He believed that love was something proven through responsibility. Not affection, but responsibilities alone could not fill the growing emotional void between them. Rania, despite the hurt she endured, did not complain to her family. She didn't want pity or judgment. She didn't want to be seen as a wife who failed to keep her household peaceful. She was taught to endure, to mend rather than break, to forgive rather than confront. Yet even endurance has limits. One afternoon, after a long day of sorting grains outside, she heard Faisal approaching. The sound of his footsteps was enough to make her heart tighten. He walked with heavy, decisive steps that carried the weight of suspicion. She quickly finished arranging the baskets. Wiping her hands on her shawl, Faisal dropped his farming tools near the door and stared at her with an expression she could not read. She offered him water, as she always did, but he did not take it. "Where were you today?" he demanded. She blinked, confused. "I was here, Faisal. I only went to the neighbor's house for a moment to borrow salt." "For a moment?" His voice tightened. "You were gone longer than that?" I spoke with her briefly. Her daughter is unwell. I didn't ask for details." His tone sharpened. Rania lowered her gaze, not out of guilt, but fear of what her eyes might reveal, her frustration, her sadness, her exhaustion. Faisal misinterpreted her silence. "You think I'm a fool?" he muttered. "No," she whispered. "I think you were tired." But her attempt at softening the moment failed. He turned away from her, muttering under his breath, fueling the bitterness that had taken root inside him. Late that night, after the household had grown quiet, Rania sat on the edge of their bed. her thoughts drifting through the years. She wondered when exactly Faisal had changed. Or perhaps, she thought, he had always been this way, and she simply hadn't seen it clearly before. Maybe love had made her hopeful. Hope had made her blind. She remembered small moments of tenderness from their early days. How he used to bring her fresh mangoes from the farm. How he once bought her a small silver bracelet she still kept inside her wooden box. How he had smiled shyly at her during their wedding. That smile had vanished now, replaced by a permanent scowl. Meanwhile, Faisal lay on the other side of the bed, facing the wall. Sleep eluded him. His mind clung to the earlier conversation, twisting it into shapes that sharpened his suspicions. He told himself he had reasons to doubt. He told himself the world was full of betrayal. He told himself that protecting his dignity meant never letting his guard down. But beneath those thoughts was a quieter truth, one he refused to acknowledge. Faisal was afraid of not being enough, afraid of being abandoned like his own mother had left when he was a child, afraid that if he trusted too freely, he would end up alone again. This fear, buried for years, was now controlling him in ways he didn't understand. The next morning brought no improvement. Faisal rose early and left for the fields without speaking to Rania. She prepared his breakfast, but he didn't eat it. She watched him from the doorway as he walked away, wishing she knew how to break through the thick walls he had built around himself that day. While tending to the crops, Faisal replayed his suspicions over and over in his mind. Angry thoughts made his work slow and clumsy. By afternoon, the sun was high and unforgiving, but he didn't rest. Instead, he worked harder, as if physical labor could drown out the voices in his head. But it didn't. The villagers noticed his behavior, his impatience, his sudden bursts of anger, his growing distrust of others. Some shook their heads. Others whispered quietly. A few tried to advise him, but Faisal brushed them off. The land around him flourished in the rainy seasons and withered in the dry ones, just as it always had. But the land inside him, the emotional soil, had grown barren. Nothing good could grow in it without sunlight, without empathy, without trust. Over the next several weeks, the distance between him and Rania widened. He spoke less. She smiled less. The home felt colder, heavier, but neither of them knew how to fix what was breaking, and neither realized how close they were to the moment everything would change, a moment that would test Rania's strength, confront Faisal's demons, can begin a transformation neither had imagined, one that could either heal them or break them forever. The following weeks unfolded like a slow-burning storm. What began as scattered clouds of suspicion gradually thickened into something darker and heavier, casting a shadow over every corner of Faisal and Rania's life. Rania tried, as she always had, to keep peace inside the house. She woke early, cooked meals, cleaned the courtyard, tended to the small herb garden she loved, and greeted neighbors with polite warmth. But even those small joys felt dimmer now. It was difficult to nurture hope when someone was constantly trying to smother it. Faisal's behavior only worsened. He scrutinized everything Rania did, how she dressed, how long she stayed outside, even who she waved to from a distance. He questioned her so often that she began rehearsing explanations in her mind before doing even the simplest tasks. One evening, she took an extra few minutes at the well because the older women were discussing the upcoming village festival. When she returned home, she found Faisal standing in the doorway, his arms crossed, his jaw stiff. "You were gone too long," he said without greeting. "There was a queue. There's always a queue, isn't there?" he snapped. Rania lowered her eyes. "I didn't want to be rude to the elder women." "So now they matter more than your own house?" "No, Faisal." Her soft reply only irritated him further. He muttered something under his breath and walked away, leaving her standing there with the water pot trembling slightly in her hands. That night, Rania lay awake long after Faisal had fallen into an uneasy sleep. She stared at the faint moonlight creeping in through the window, letting it settle on her face. It felt cold against her skin. She wondered when she had last felt warm. She wasn't angry, at least, not yet. Mostly she was confused and tired. She didn't understand what she had done to deserve his mistrust. She didn't understand how to make him see reality. She didn't understand why she still loved the man who hurt her with words more than he ever hurt her with hands. But love, she realized, is complicated, sometimes painfully so. The village festival approached, bringing with it a sense of excitement among the villagers. Lanterns were hung from trees, small stalls were built, and music floated through the air in the evenings. Children practiced dances, rehearsing their steps under the guidance of older cousins. Rania wanted to go. Festivals always reminded her of the childhood she missed, carefree days, sweet treats, laughter with friends she no longer met. But she didn't dare express her wish. Faisal was unpredictable. Some days he let her go to gatherings. Other days he would accuse her of using them as opportunities to do something wrong. A day before the festival, Rania was sitting on the porch, sorting lentils in a large metal tray. The rhythmic sound of the grains hitting the tray helped calm her. She felt the faint breeze on her face and closed her eyes for a moment. "You seem relaxed," an unexpected voice said. Rania opened her eyes to see her older sister's husband, Harun, walking toward her. He lived in a nearby village, but often passed through this area on work trips. "Oh, it's you," she said, trying to smile. "You look tired," Harun said gently. "Is everything all right?" She hesitated. She wanted to say yes because that was her usual answer. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the kindness in his eyes. Maybe it was the familiarity. Maybe it was the exhaustion of pretending everything was always fine. "It's been a difficult few months," she finally said in a low voice. Harun nodded slowly. "Your sister mentioned you sounded worried whenever you talked. She wanted to visit but didn't want to cause trouble." Kenya forced a small smile. "Tell her I'm fine." Harun didn't believe her, but he didn't push. Instead, he reached out and placed a small paper packet on the porch. "It's something your sister made for you. Sweet biscuits. She knew you liked them." Rania blinked in surprise. "Thank you." Harun nodded again and left, giving her space, unfortunately. Faisal had seen them speaking from the barn where he was repairing his tools. When he entered the house later, his expression was thunderous. Rania noticed it immediately. She sensed a storm building. "Who was that?" Faisal asked, though he clearly knew. "My brother-in-law," she replied softly. "He brought biscuits from—" "I saw him talking to you," Faisal interrupted, his voice dropping lower. "He was just checking on us." "And why would he check on my house?" Faisal demanded. Rania felt a chill. "He passes through the village often. He just stopped to greet me." Faisal's nostrils flared. "I don't like strangers hanging around you. It's family," she whispered. Faisal didn't respond. He stared at her for a long, tense moment before walking out again. She could feel the heaviness of his suspicion lingering even after he had gone. Later that evening, when she opened the packet of biscuits, she suddenly didn't feel like eating them anymore. The day of the festival arrived. The village was alive with color and music. Children roamed with painted faces, vendors sold roasted corn, and the air was filled with the smell of fried sweets. Women danced in groups while men played traditional drums. Rania stood by the window of her home, watching the celebration from afar. Her heart ached to be there, even just for an hour. The laughter, the lights, the sounds, all of it felt like a world she no longer belonged to. She didn't ask Faisal for permission. She already knew the answer would be no. But as fate would have it, a couple of village women stopped by their house to invite her personally. They were cheerful, insisting that she join them even for a short while. Rania looked at Faisal, silently asking, silently pleading. Faisal hesitated. Then, as if trying to appear reasonable in front of others, he forced a smile. "Go," he said. Rania blinked. She had expected a refusal. "Are you sure?" "Yes," he said, trying to keep the tension out of his voice. "Just don't stay too long." Rania's face brightened slightly. "I won't. Thank you." She left with the women, her steps light for the first time in months. She wore a simple blue dress and tied her hair loosely. For a brief moment, she felt free. At the festival, she mingled quietly, bought a sweet for herself, and watched the children perform their dance. Laughter echoed around her. Lanterns glowed above her. Music vibrated through the air. She savored every second, storing them like treasures in her heart. But unknown to her, Faisal had followed. He watched her from a distance, hidden among the small groups of men standing near the food stalls. He saw nothing inappropriate. She didn't speak to any man, didn't wander away with anyone, didn't do anything wrong. And yet, his mind twisted the sight of her smiling into something dangerous. His insecurities needed no evidence, no reason. They only needed shadows to grow. After an hour, Rania returned home, happy but tired. She walked into the courtyard, humming a tune she had heard at the festival. Faisal entered moments later. She looked up at him. Ready to tell him about the children's dance? About the pretty lanterns? About the music? But his face was unreadable. "Did you enjoy yourself?" he asked quietly. "Yes," she said honestly. "It was beautiful." His jaw tightened. "You were smiling a lot," he said. Rania blinked, confused. "Because it was a celebration. You seemed very comfortable," Faisal continued. Her heart sank. She recognized this pattern. He was building a story in his mind, piece by twisted piece. "Faisal, nothing happened," she said softly. "I stayed with the women the whole time." He didn't respond. He walked past her, muttering something she couldn't hear. Rania felt the old ache return. Even her small moment of happiness was tainted now. Later that night, she sat outside under the stars. The festival drums had quieted, replaced by the chirping of crickets. She wrapped her shawl tightly around her shoulders and wondered how long she could continue like this. In the distance, she heard faint laughter, people still enjoying the night. She wished she could hold on to the spark of joy she felt earlier. But it was fading quickly. Inside the house, Faisal sat alone, staring at his calloused hands. They trembled slightly, though he didn't know why. He didn't understand the storm inside him, fear disguised as anger, insecurity disguised as protection. All he knew was that something inside him was cracking, but he wasn't ready to face it. Not yet. The night passed slowly, and with it came the beginning of something neither of them could foresee: a shift. Subtle, but powerful. That would shape the next chapter of their lives. A shift that would either break them completely or begin to heal what had been wounded for far too long. The days that followed the festival were heavy with an unspoken tension. Rania could feel it in the way Faisal's eyes lingered on her, searching for something that wasn't there. He spoke little, but the quiet itself carried accusation. It filled the house like an invisible smoke, suffocating both of them. Rania kept herself busy, cleaning, cooking, grinding spices, washing clothes. Tending to her small herb garden, work was her refuge now. When her hands were occupied, her mind had less room to wander toward fear or sadness. Still, even silence needed to break sometimes. One afternoon, Rania stood near the well rinsing vegetables when she heard footsteps approaching. She stiffened instinctively. Faisal's steps were heavy and rhythmic, easy to recognize. But the sound was lighter, quicker. It was Semra, a young neighbor girl who often helped her mother deliver milk in the village. "Rania Baji," she called with a cheerful smile. "My mother sent fresh yogurt for you." Rania smiled gratefully and took the small clay pot. "Thank you, Samra. Tell your mother I appreciate it." The girl nodded eagerly. She said, "You can come by any time if you need help." Rania's smile faltered for a moment. That's kind of her. Before Samra could leave, Faisal's voice boomed from behind. "Why is she here?" Samra jumped slightly, startled. Rania quickly stepped forward. "She came to give yogurt. Her mother sent it." Faisal looked at the girl, his face stern. Samra clutched her empty basket nervously. I should go," she whispered and hurried off. As soon as she was out of sight, Faisal turned to Rania. "You're getting very popular these days." Rania's heart sank. "Faisal, she's just a child." He didn't reply. He simply walked away, leaving Rania staring after him in disbelief. At that moment, she felt something shift deep inside hers, something small but unmistakable. It wasn't anger or resentment. It was a realization even innocence wasn't safe from his suspicions. That evening, Rania quietly lit an oil lamp in the courtyard. The glow softened the roughness of the brick walls, making the night seem less harsh. She sat on the floor with a bowl of lentils, sorting them slowly, methodically. Faisal sat nearby, sharpening his sickle. The steady scrape of metal filled the space between them. Rania wanted to speak, she needed to, but the fear of how he might respond held her tongue. Finally, Faisal spoke. "You were talking to Harun that day," he said abruptly, without looking at her. Rania froze. She had known this topic wasn't over. She just didn't expect it now. "I told you already," she said softly. "He came to give biscuits for my sister. Okay?" And that required a long conversation in front of the house. His tone was harsh but quiet. It wasn't long. And we didn't say anything unusual. He finally looked up, his eyes dark. "I don't believe that." Rania inhaled slowly. "Faisal, what will it take for you to trust me?" He clenched the sickle tightly. "Women shouldn't talk to men outside their family." "He is family," Rania said gently. "He's my brother-in-law." "That doesn't change anything," Faisal replied coldly. Rania swallowed her frustration. "Why do you always doubt me?" He didn't answer immediately. His jaw moved, grinding unseen thoughts between his teeth. Finally, he said, "Because I've seen what happens when men trust too much." Rania recognized the tone. This wasn't about her. It was about something deeper. "What happened?" she asked quietly. Faisal didn't speak. He simply stood and walked inside, leaving her alone with a flickering lamp and a growing sense of helplessness. The next week brought pouring rain. Monsoon clouds gathered above the fields and released their weight in heavy bursts. The farm soaked in much-needed water, but the storm inside Faisal hadn't eased. One afternoon, as lightning cracked in the distance, Rania was sweeping water out of the courtyard when she heard a loud knock at the door. She wiped her hands and opened it. It was her sister, Amina. The sight made Rania's throat tighten. It had been months since she last visited. Amina stepped inside quickly and embraced Rania tightly, sensing the trembling in her body. "What's wrong?" Amina whispered. Rania shook her head, unable to speak yet. Before she could gather herself, Faisal appeared at the doorway of the room. His expression darkened immediately. "Why is she here?" he asked flatly. Amina straightened, not intimidated. "I came to see my sister without informing us." He shot back. Amina raised an eyebrow. "Do sisters need permission now?" Rania stepped between them cautiously, fearing the direction this could go. "Please, let's not argue." Amina glanced at Rania's face, reading the strain in her eyes. "I came because you sounded sad last time we spoke." Faisal stiffened. Rania felt her heart race. "We didn't talk about anything serious," she said quickly. "Just small things." But Amina wasn't fooled. She placed a hand on Rania's arm. "Come with me for a walk." Rania looked at Faisal. His lips thinned, but he didn't forbid it, likely because Amina was watching him closely. They walked to the back of the house, where the air smelled of wet soil and the breeze carried a hint of jasmine from the neighbors' plants. "What's happening?" Amina asked softly. "Tell me the truth." Rania avoided her gaze. "Faisal has been stressed. The fields haven't been easy this season." Amina nodded slowly. And he doubts me," Rania whispered. Amina's expression hardened with concern. "How badly?" "He questions everything I do. Sometimes he gets angry. Sometimes he won't talk at all." Amina took a deep breath. "Have you told him how you feel?" Rania looked down. "Every time I try, he gets more upset." Amina squeezed her shoulder. "Rania, this isn't your fault." The words made Rania's eyes sting. She blinked rapidly, refusing to let the tears fall. Before Amina could say more, Faisal's voice echoed from the courtyard. "Rania." Rania quickly wiped her eyes and walked back inside. Faisal was standing under the awning, rainwater dripping from the roof behind him. "You didn't finish your work," he said coldly. Rania felt Amina step beside her, protective. "She can take a break," Amina said firmly. Faisal glared, but Amina met his eyes without fear. Rania placed a hand on her sister's arm. "It's okay. Please go home before the rain gets worse." Amina hesitated, but she saw the desperation in Rania's eyes. She finally nodded. "I'll come back," she whispered before leaving. When the door closed, Faisal turned to Rania. His anger wasn't explosive, it was quiet, simmering beneath the surface. "You're telling people our problems now?" he asked. Rania shook her head. "I didn't tell her anything." "Don't lie to me," he said. "I'm not lying," she whispered. "You heard everything." But Faisal wasn't listening. His fears were too loud inside his mind. He walked away again, leaving Rania feeling smaller than ever. Over the next few days, Faisal became distant. Not loud, not confrontational, just absent. He went to the fields early and returned late. He spoke less. He avoided eye contact at first. Rania thought this was good, a break from suspicion. But silence can be as dangerous as anger. She could feel something building beneath it, something he wasn't saying. Then one night, as they lay in bed, Faisal spoke in a low voice she barely recognized. "Did you ever think of leaving?" he asked suddenly. Rania turned her head sharply. "What?" "You seem unhappy," he said. "Faisal, I haven't thought of leaving. I've thought of wanting things to be better. That's all." He stared at the ceiling. "I don't know how to make things better. Starts with trust," she said. Faisal didn't move, didn't breathe for a moment. Then he whispered, "I don't know if I can." Rania's chest tightened. "Why?" The answer came in pieces. "My mother." He began. "She left when I was young. My father trusted her. He believed her lies. And then one day she was gone with someone else." Rania's eyes softened with shock. "Faisal, I swore I would never be like him. Never be the fool who trusted too much." Rania reached out slowly, placing her hand over his. For once, he didn't pull away. His eyes were distant, filled with an old pain, a wound that had never healed. "Faisal," she whispered, "I am not your mother." He didn't reply, but his breath shook. For the first time, the wall between them cracked, not from anger, but from vulnerability. But a crack is not a cure, and the storm inside him was far from over. For the first time in months, Faisal's confession lingered between them like something fragile and unfamiliar. Rania lay awake long after he fell into a restless sleep. She kept replaying his words, "I don't know if I can trust," over and over, trying to understand the depth of the wound he carried. She had known he was struggling, but she had not known how deeply his past had shaped his fears, how much pain hid beneath his anger, how much loneliness existed behind his silence. Yet understanding his pain didn't erase her own. In the days that followed, something shifted between them. Not dramatically, no sudden warmth, no sweeping changes, but small, subtle moments. Faisal didn't snap as quickly. He didn't question every step she took. He didn't glare when she spoke to neighbors. He was still distant. But the sharp edge of hostility had softened. Rania, cautious but hopeful, tried to meet his quiet efforts with her own. She prepared his meals with extra care. She left a cup of tea by his tools before he left for the fields. She didn't push him to talk, but she didn't pull away either. It was as if both were standing at opposite sides of a broken bridge, uncertain how to cross, but unwilling to walk away still. Healing is never a straight line. One afternoon, while Rania was preparing dough for bread, she overheard two village women outside exchanging gossip, the kind that spreads quickly and sticks for too long. One said, "I heard Amina came to visit because Rania is miserable in her marriage." The other replied, "And Faisal. You know how he is. Always doubting, always watching her. It's only a matter of time before things get worse." Rania froze, the rolling pin slipping from her hands. Her heart thudded with a mix of fear and humiliation. She didn't want her life discussed like this. She didn't want to be the subject of pity. She leaned against the counter, breathing slowly until the tremble in her hands settled. But the gossip didn't end there. That evening, when Faisal returned from the fields, he seemed tense again. He washed up quietly, ate quietly, moved through the house like a man carrying a weight he couldn't set down as they prepared for bed. Rania finally gathered the courage to approach him. "Faisal," she said softly, "something is bothering you." He didn't answer. She waited. Finally, he said, "People are talking about what?" "About us." Rania felt her stomach twist. They don't know the truth. They don't understand. He shook his head. They don't need truth. They just need something to talk about. Rania hesitated. Then carefully she said, "We can't live our lives based on what others say." Faisal looked at her, eyes shadowed by something deeper than anger. "Maybe you can ignore them. I can't." She stepped closer. "Why does their opinion matter more than mine?" He didn't answer. Instead, he looked away, his jaw tightening, not in fury, but in fear. Fear of judgment. Fear of losing control. Fear of facing the cracks within himself. Rania touched his arm gently. "We can fix this, but only if we both try." He stared at her hand for a long moment, as if deciding whether to pull away or hold on. Before he could choose, someone knocked at the door. Amina stood outside, drenched from walking in the drizzle, her face set with determination. "I'm sorry to come unannounced," she said, "but I need to talk to both of you." Faisal tensed. Rania felt her heart flutter nervously. Amina stepped inside and closed the door behind her. "I've kept quiet too long," she said. "Rania is my sister. I won't watch her suffer silently." Rania's breath caught. "Amina, please." "No," Amina said firmly, but with kindness. "This isn't to shame anyone." She looked at Faisal directly. "I'm here because I believe people can change, but only if they admit they need to." Faisal's expression hardened defensively, but Amina raised a hand. "Just listen," she said. "Rania loves you. She believes in you. But she's breaking inside. And if something doesn't change, she will shatter completely." Rania felt tears well in her eyes, but she didn't look away. Faisal's shoulders slumped slightly. "I'm trying," he whispered. "I know," Amina said gently, "but trying in silence isn't enough. You have to talk to her. You have to let her talk to. You have to heal what you've ignored." The room was quiet except for the soft patter of rain. Then something happened, something small, but life-changing. Faisal sat down, not angrily, not defensively. He sat down like a man who was tired of carrying everything alone. Amina nodded, sensing the shift. She turned to Rania. "Can I speak with him alone for a moment?" Rania hesitated, then nodded and stepped outside under the awning. Inside, their voices murmured softly, not sharp, not confrontational, but honest. She couldn't hear the words, but she felt their weight. When Amina came out 15 minutes later, her expression was softer. "He needed to hear the truth," she said. "Not from someone he fears disappointing, but from someone who can speak without breaking." Rania looked at her sister, eyes hopeful and afraid. And Amina smiled faintly. "He's hurting, more than he shows. But he wants to change." Rania's breath trembled. "And can he?" "That depends on both of you," Amina said simply. She hugged her sister and left quietly into the fading rain. Leaving the house strangely still, Rania stepped inside. Faisal was sitting in the middle of the room, hands clasped tightly, as if holding broken pieces together. When he looked up at her, something was different. His eyes, usually filled with suspicion, were raw. "Open, vulnerable Rania," he said quietly. "I'm sorry." The words weren't smooth. They weren't easy. They scraped out of him like something unused to the light. Rania felt her heart tremble. She walked closer but didn't touch him yet. "I've hurt you," Faisal continued, his voice unsteady, "not because you deserved it, but because I was afraid." Rania's eyes softened. "I know. I didn't trust you," he whispered. "I didn't trust anyone, not even myself." Her breath shook. "Faisal, I never wanted to leave you. I just wanted peace. I wanted a home that didn't feel like a prison." He lowered his head. "I know. And I don't want to be the man who took that away from you." Silence filled the space, but this time it wasn't heavy. It wasn't a wall. It was an opening. Rania knelt beside him, placing her hand over his. He didn't pull away. "Trust can grow," she said softly. "So can love. But not in fear." Faisal nodded, a tear slipping down his cheek, the first she had ever seen. "I want to be better," he whispered. "For you. For myself. I want to help you," Rania said. They stayed like that to people finally meeting in the same moment of truth, the same fragile hope. The rain stopped. The clouds slowly parted. The scent of wet earth drifted in through the open window. In the months that followed, change didn't happen overnight. But it happened. Faisal began talking more, listening more. Rania shared her fears, her dreams, her pain. They learned to speak without wounds, to argue without destruction, to sit together without silence feeling like punishment. The villagers noticed the difference. The gossip faded. The suspicion that once controlled Faisal slowly loosened its grip. And though the scars remained, as scars always do, they became reminders of how far they had come, not how far they had fallen by the time the next harvest season arrived. Faisal and Rania worked side by side in the fields, planting seeds not just in soil, but in the fragile, hopeful earth of their shared life. Trust grew. Patience grew. Love, quiet, steady, resilient, grew. Their story didn't become perfect, but it became theirs again. A story of healing. A story of courage. A story reborn from Brokenness. Then that, in the end, was enough.